Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. So this video is going to be a tutorial. I'm going to be sewing a princess line split hem skirt. So if you want this pattern, you can find it on my Etsy, Metanoia Patterns, and it is the 1201 princess split hem skirt. So the first thing you're going to need to do is obviously cut your pattern pieces. So this is the center front. You cut one of these on folds. So the fold line would be right there. Then you would cut two of the side fronts, two of the center back, two of the side back, and then for the waistband, this piece is on fold, that's why it looks shorter. But for the waistband, you want to cut one piece out of yourself, so the fabric that you're using for your skirt, and then you also want to cut another piece out of interfacing. So I'm using fusible interfacing. You can also use sew-on interfacing if you like, but you're going to need one of the actual fabric and one for interfacing. And that's with the same waistband pattern. So when you cut out your pieces, you want to make sure that you also transfer all the notches. That is especially important on the side front and the side back. You want to be able to distinguish which piece is the side back and which piece is the side front, because they do look kind of similar, but they're not. And you're going to be able to tell which is which based on the notches. And the notches are also important on all the other pieces, just to identify where to pin things. So make sure you transfer all your notches. So once you've cut out your pieces and you've transferred your notches, the next thing you can do, if you have a serger, I would recommend you serge all of your side seams on all your pieces. So the center back, the center, or the side back, the center back, the center front, and the side front. You don't need to serge the edges for your waistband because they're going to be folded up, but if you wanted to, you could do that as well. And if you don't have a serger, you don't have to worry. You could do a zigzag stitch, or you could just leave your edges raw if that's what you normally do, especially if you have a fabric that doesn't fray. So like I mentioned, you want to serge or finish the edges with a zigzag stitch if you have that option available to you. So I did that for all my pieces, on both pieces of course as well. So just these side seams. You don't have to worry about like the top and the bottom, because the top is going to be finished with the waistband and the bottom is going to be hemmed. So the next step, once you're done serging all the edges, you want to get your center back piece, and you want to be able to pin both pieces together, and then basically pin from the bottom up to this double notch. So that's where your zipper is going to begin. If you're using an 8-inch zipper, if you want to use a different zipper length, like a 7 or a 9-inch, you can go ahead. Just measure this and then give yourself 1 inch for the waistband. But this is just the notch you could use for now. I wouldn't recommend using a zipper smaller than 7 inches, just because you need to make sure it can fit over your hips. So I'm just going to pin this and match the notches. So now you're just going to stitch from here to here, and the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. All the seam allowances on the skirt are 5/8 of an inch. So once you're done stitching this seam, I would suggest that you open it up and press this seam open. And make sure you also press this part open as well. I have to cut that excess thread. But make sure you press this part open as well. If it helps, you can measure and pin it. But as you're pressing, press this open, which this is going to help you when you're inserting the zipper. So once you've pressed this seam open, you're going to take your center back and your side back pieces and you're going to align it base with these notches over here, and you're going to pin it together on both sides. So this is your center back piece, and you're going to pin right sides together. So it's going to get pinned like this. So you're going to take your side back. This is the right side, this is the right side. So right sides together. And you're going to pin starting at the notch. So once you've had these two pieces pinned, you can now sew along these edges. And like I said, the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. And this is basically what the entire back piece will look like once you've stitched those seams. So once you finish sewing these seams, you're going to press everything open, and this is what you should have. So this is the entire back piece. And that's just what it looks like on the outside. So we're going to move on to sewing the front. So for the front, you're going to take the side front and the center front, and you're going to match this notch and this notch. This notch on the center front is just for the hem allowance, so you don't need to worry about that. But you're going to match the notches and pin from the top all the way down to this notch. And you're going to go down to this notch if you want to do that split hem opening, so this part will be open. You can also choose to close this seam completely if you want. But I'm going to just sew up to here and then show you how to open this part. So now that you have both of the pins, like I said, just leave this bottom part open. So that's what it's going to look like. So this part is going to be open. If you want, you can close this completely so it's a completely closed seam. You can also go higher on this if you want a bigger opening. But I'm going to go and sew the seam, both of these, and the seam allowance is once again 5/8 of an inch. So once you sew these seams, you're going to want to press it open, and this is really important because you want to press this bottom part open as well, and I would suggest you pin it so it matches this seam opening, because now you're basically going to sew along here, come up here, and then sew back down here. So this, you're going to sew flat down, and you're going to do it on both sides. You can also choose, if you want, especially if your end is not finished, you can choose to double roll this. So you tuck the ends inside, but because I finished my ends with a serger, I'm just going to do a single fold. And you're going to want to make sure this is as neat as possible because it's going to show up on this side as well. So once you're finished sewing, it's going to look like this. That's just in detail what it looks like. And then the other side will look like this. So that's what that looks like. So now this is your finished front piece. So once you have that done, you're going to take your finished back piece, put it over top, and sew the side seams together. So once you have this pin, you're going to sew this seam, and once again it is 5/8 of an inch. So now you've put together the entire front and back of the skirt. Obviously you can press this seam open as well, both of these. But this is the body of the skirt. So the front and then the back. Well, this is the front and then the back. So now we're going to move on to the waistband. So for the waistband, you are going to want to apply interfacing to it. This is going to help make it more stable so it's not as flimsy. So I'm using fusible interfacing, so I'm just going to fuse this on with an iron throughout the entire thing. If you're using sew-on interfacing, you can sew that on. And that's going to be the first step we do before we start applying the waistband to the skirt. So I've now interfaced my waistband, applied it onto the wrong side of the fabric, and now I'm going to attach the waistband to the skirt. So you're going to take your skirt piece and you want it right side out. So the proper side of the garment is facing outside. So then you're going to take your waistband and also have it laying right sides facing the skirt, and then you're going to pin it around the skirt like this. So I'm going to start off by pinning the side seam notches to the side seam. And then I'm just gonna keep pinning the rest of the skirt. So now that you've got that pinned, you're gonna sew this top seam all the way around, and once again the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. So I've just sewn on the waistband, so this is what it will look like. So we're starting to get there. So we're now, before we finish the waistband, we're gonna attach the zipper. So we're gonna turn the skirt around, and you want the waistband to be lifted up. I'm just gonna fold this over so it matches this fold. It will be 5/8 of an inch, and you also want all this inside part up. So you're gonna take your zipper, and then you're basically just gonna attach it to the back. I know there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just the way I'm doing it. Obviously you can do your own method, but you're gonna attach the zipper from this bottom up into about halfway into the waistband, because the waistband is gonna get folded over. So you don't want like this part to be like all the way up here or anything like that. So once I've got the zipper pinned in place, I'm just gonna sew it down. So I'm gonna sew down here, across here, and back up here. And then we're gonna come back and finish the waistband. Now that the zipper is attached, we're gonna finish off the waistband. So in order to do that, what we're going to be doing is folding it over so it's about half the size, and we're also going to fold this edge inside and then fold it over, and then we're going to start pinning it. And you want to pin it, there's a lot of different ways to sew waistbands. This is just how I'm going to be doing it, but I'm going to pin it so that it sits right here, and then I'm going to sew right in this ditch so you don't see the seam. Now if you don't care, obviously you can move this up a little bit higher and then sew right on top, and then you'll be able to see the seam. You can also serge this edge and then just fold it over like this so the edge is finished, so you don't have to worry about folding it again like this, if that's easier for you. But I'm just going to be doing it like this. You can also kind of like pin this around, measure and pin it around first if you want, if that's easier. And you also want to make sure this edge, it should be folded over when you sew the zipper, but you just want to make sure it is. So as I was saying, when you're folding this over, you want it to go past this line on this side a little bit. And it's a little bit hard to explain, but when you're pinning it, you'll be able to feel the fabric from the other side over here, because we're going to be stitching right here. So I'm done pinning the waistband, and as I said, you're going to want to sew right along this edge right here, making sure that it catches the actual waistband. And you're also going to want to make sure you sew right here on both sides of the zipper, because this is open right now, so you just want to close that off. So you can see now that I've sewn it, and that's where the stitch is, and that's what it looks like on this side. So now that the waistband is completely done, the skirt is almost finished. The last thing we have to do is hem the bottom. So the hem allowance I put on this is 1.5 inches. You can obviously use less of that if you want the skirt to be a little longer. But yeah, I'm gonna fold it at 1.5 inches and then just like do a double fold, mark where the 1.5 inches is. There are some notches on the pattern, so like, as you can see here and here, if you can even tell, I've notched it. So you're basically going to fold and fold again. So I've just finished hemming the skirt. That's what it looks like. And now that you've hemmed the skirt, it is complete. So this is what the finished skirt looks like. The front. And the back. So like I said, this pattern is pretty customizable. You can always increase the split or close it completely. And it's pretty easy to sew as well. So if you're someone who's getting into sewing, I think this is a good pattern to start off at. Like I mentioned, you can order this pattern off of my Etsy, Metanoia Patterns. It is 1201 Princess. It is a split hem skirt. I'll have the link in the description box, so you can go over there and order it if you like. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions in terms of like some of the instructions, you can leave them down in the comments and I'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.